Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11. And you guessed it, we're playing as Japan. And we still got lots of hard fighting left to do in China, let alone other places. We are being successful, but we got a lot of hard fighting. And hey, if you would, just do me a favor. I'm going to pause here for a moment. If you could just hit that like button. Would you please? Okay, thank you. I do appreciate that. That helps both me and you in that it helps me get the videos more shown more on YouTube, and it helps you by telling YouTube that you like this type of content, whether from my channel or other channel. And speaking of my channel, you can also subscribe to me. I would appreciate that as well, because I'd love to see you around more often. So let's continue this and speed it up. We are pushing towards the sea. Good. Battle Commander recognition has advanced. Very good. We'll stop that for now. Mountain HQs could be nice. How long until we occupy this? The 20th. Okay, a couple of more days. That's their capital. I don't know if they'll move their capital or they'll surrender. You join the assault. Again, that's their capital, and I don't know if they'll move it or surrender. No longer receive. Okay, fuel. And infiltration tactics, which is something that Japan was fairly good at. And we'll let that continue to get better at that. And yes, of course, we know about that battle that you're constantly harassing me with. You would think, I guess maybe they just got so many units there, but the time between attacks would keep them from overly doing that. Don't know why it's moving units down here, if it really thinks it's going to counterattack for once successfully, or just that it's nationalist Chinese territory. I think they would give that up and, you know, better profitably defend up here. Okay, you can support the attack. I think you should move in with this attack here. They're not doing too well. Okay. They've got up to here. Okay, well, we're holding this as just a HQ, but that's enough. Okay, let's see if we move this fairly elite unit around over to, well, this would probably be the quickest way. Trying to flank here because we want to take out sort of Shenzhen or whatever you want to call that place. Canton. Yeah. Okay. Fighter ground control. Well, we're not doing much on radar, but, well, in the future we will, so let's continue that. I'm gonna let these go through. I added another thing of convoys here. And escorts we're still gonna go because we want to build up to be able to take losses. When I play as Germany, because of a couple of things, including hits to national unity, I don't like to lose convoys as Germany. No, I don't like to lose them as anybody. And so I'm very sensitive about it on Germany. I think it was Rick that was showing me some screenshots. And he had a lot of convoys going out here that were getting hit, and I advised him to stop all non-European trade as Germany until, because with not a European trade you get to do it without convoys in that zone, until you get a Mediterranean port, mostly I was thinking down here, with a contiguous German territories, not occupied, not allied, but contiguous German territories to here, or say if you had taken all of France and not done the Vichy thing. Oh no, I think occupied. No, German occupied. German direct occupied also works, I believe, yes, but not through Allied territory. Get to here, and then get, say, the Suez. Then you might start trading with countries like Iran and Japan and other Asian places that may have fuel or rare materials that you want. And so then I would do that and risk some losses. Now, we're going to need to supply our island bases and, you know, holdings like the Philippines and coming down this way. And I just don't know how much we're going to face in anti-convoy warfare. I know sort of it's a fair amount. Well, you should probably come down to here. Is here where we want? Yeah, I'm here. Because I think you'll be able to fire support into here and here. And no, you're not much of a battleship. Got these guys. I can come down here for when we get ready to move in on some of these places, which we are going to do very soon. As we start battling for the coast. Okay, you're coming to cut off there. You're pushing into there. You can go into there. Okay, so you give them money, lots of money for fuel. No, I wish you would do a smaller amount. I'd take you up on a smaller amount. Oh, the mud starts to clear. Very good. Tibet. Sure. Carrier aircraft armor has advanced. Very good. So now that everyone's at 41 there, we're going to stop those. Don't know if I should shift even more leadership over to officers. Yeah, well, we're going to just cancel jungle unit training. Yes, cancel that. And we've lost a province here to partisans. Okay, dudes, attack them. The US, give them money for some oil. Okay. Yes, we know we're under attack. You're attacking again and again. Air Force HQs, very nice. And we're going to stop that and go to something else for now. And actually we're going to put more, even more into officers. We want to get that back up to 110. And more partisans. Okay, well, I think you guys could probably take on these partisans. Send the headquarters staff down there. Oh yes, okay, study for the headquarters, right. Yes, we'll take this. Small fleet, no need. I don't think we want that stuff right now. Oh wow. Okay, you can advance into here. You're coming to there. You're going that way, so you come this way. You're going there. You're already pushing into there, so you strike into there. Here. And you can support that attack. Thought we were going to be here on the 12th of November now. I don't know why that's changing. Or did I just read it wrong? Probably just read it wrong, but either way, it's still taking a long, long time. Did we just win down here? Is it here? Yeah. Oh, here. We just won here. Great. There. Okay. You come to defend there. You attack into the mountains there, because you're, oh, a mountain division, yes. Sort of the right type. And you support them. Hopefully we'll get there soon enough. It looks like they will. Okay, Siam. No, lots of money for fuel. No, we're not spending all of our money. We're trying to build our money up. No, again, we're not spending all of our money. Be a little less ambitious, I think, would be the... Okay, these guys are heading there, but they're sort of blocking this counterattack. Good enough. Oh, we need a little more. you support their attack. I know they're going into the mountains and all, so that heavy armor should... Well, infantry tank's not really heavy armor. Trying to sit here, think. Okay, to be an infantry tank, you don't have to be a heavy tank, because we would definitely say the FT-17, which of course is a 1917, you know, either machine gun or 37 millimeter gun tank, and they were heavily used, and over 1,000 of them were involved in the Battle of France. So they were still a front line, and not just like a reserve. Oh, we're keeping them back near Paris or something. No, they were a front-line tank for the French army in 1940 during the Battle of France. But then we also have the R-35 and the H-35 and the H-39 are two-man tanks that are infantry tanks because they are slow. They're the same general size as an FT-17 in that they're small two-man vehicles, but they're up-armored. The 35s, the H and the R-35s, have the exact same gun, including the idea of not only is it the shooting the exact caliber, or even some of them are definitely new manufactured guns, but they picked the same one because as they intended to retire the FT-17s, they were going to take their guns out, World War I leftover guns, or 1920 production or something, but they basically stopped very quickly on production of FT-17s after the war. So they might not have had a lot of use in the war, but made for World War I. Take those guns out and put them in the newer models. The 39 has both a longer barrel and, as I've learned, a slightly longer cartridge to it. Still a 37 millimeter gun, but they're all designed to move at the walking speed of infantry, not running speed, but walking speed of infantry. Now you can go to the Char B, which I also would sort of categorize it specifically as a heavy infantry tank. It is, again, a very slow vehicle. Don't know if quite as slow, but it's not. And also, if it's called a tank in French service at the time, it's for the infantry. If it's an armored car, it's for the cavalry. So, like, you get the Sauma, which is categorized as an armored car, the tank, but it was a fast tank, and it was closest thing the French really had to a medium tank. But it's fast, relatively so, not a BT 5 or 7 fast, but relatively fast tank, and it's designed for maneuver warfare. So an infantry tank can be a light tank, it can be a heavily armored light tank like the Matilda or Matilda 1, whatever you want to call it, where the Matilda 2 is also an infantry tank. It is slow, but now we are definitely not just a heavily armored, which the Matilda 1 was just machine gun armed, but having heavy armor. The Matilda 2 has heavy armor, so generally speaking, not entirely, but generally speaking, an infantry tank has heavy armor, even if it's small. The Japanese are definitely an exception there. The Soviets are definitely an exception there, because we can look at, I get some of the models confused, sorry, but the sort of like, the T-26, the little tanks, or maybe even the big T-28s, the big sort of multi-turret tanks, those would be considered, I think, infantry tanks. Definitely I would sort of consider the T-26 an infantry tank, where the BT series, BT-3s, which are still around in World War II, but aren't very much. It's mostly BT-5s, BT-7s. Those are fast tanks, and of course the BT-3 is almost an exact copy of a Christie. The 5 and the 7s are just sort of upgunned and improved, but very much a Christie tank in very, very many features. But all of that inspires the T-34. So you have all of that, but then you have heavy tanks that aren't necessarily as fast as a medium or fast tank, but is not so slow or designed to be an infantry tank. So there you would find at least in its early days, the Panzer IV would be a heavy tank for the Germans. Not quite the new art, the big multi-turreted things, but it's still sort of a support tank. Just sort of right there between the medium and the heavy, but definitely not really an infantry tank, where the German infantry tank wasn't a tank, it was the Sturmgeschütz without a turret. Otherwise it's a tank, but it's not. It's a non-turreted tank. So it's, that's what the Germans did. And again, that's quick. So infantry tank sort of flows around in what it is. It generally, though, generally speaking, isn't a big heavy gun. And you can talk whether the Char B1 has a heavy gun on it. Yeah, it's a 75mm gun, so it's sort of kinda, but you can sort of look around that way. It's not like a Tiger or a KV series of tanks where we would go, clearly those are heavy tanks. And sure, you can attach them to infantry units, but so it's sort of this weird nomenclature. I am not against the idea of infantry tanks here. You can see that as these things increase, these are increasing speed much faster. Okay, we've won there. And we've won up here. Good. So that allows them to get there. He'll retake our territories down there. Are we running supplies down into here? Yes, good. Thought we were. Both because this capacity is okay, but might as well add this supplying capacity. But even now it's cut off, which we have. These guys, oh, they're not really doing much in a ground attack anymore. Okay. It's probably because their targets are somewhere else. We might as well use them. Go. Someone got our blueprints, so well. Okay, that's all not doing so well, so let's add in some firepower into it. And we'll send these guys, which aren't in good shape, but fast movers are relatively so. Okay, you're coming down that way, you're coming that way. You continue down to here. You're doing that. You guys come here, probably overkill now. And yes, okay. We're going to continue to roll the coast up here. Well, maybe just come down this way. They're going that way, so these guys can support our tanks moving here, which are just about out of gas, but now that'll change the landscape. Okay, yes, you guys continue to hammer into there. Those are mountainous, so it's down here. Yeah. When will they be able to attack? 55 hours, not so soon. They can attack once they're there, but yeah, we'll probably want to go that way. Now it's November 4th. At least for that unit. November 8th. Thought it was the 14th. I don't know. Let's see if you can ride fast into the mountains. You can come here. I think we'll send you down there. You're gonna have trouble getting across that river, probably. You're definitely coming in on their capital here. Oh, too many. There. Oh, you guys need to move forward. Man, our blueprints keep getting stolen. Okay, let's look at intel. Well, our own spies, counter-espionage, let's increase that. Active spies, domestic 10. And I don't think we can have more than 10, and we have 8 in the USA. So I don't think we need to shift more there. Just don't know that we're doing a good enough job. Or an effective job. Okay guys, you jump in on this. 4-engine transport plane. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to build those, but I wanted to have that as a sort of a, you know, backup if I decide I need to. Because what's really nice about those things, and is, of course, I do think most of you watch my German playthroughs already, at least one of them, but if you haven't, they're great supply. They carry lots of supply, and they're also long range, so that just let's say there's too many submarines around this area to supply into the Philippines. I can, you know, come to an airbase up here and supply down to an airbase down here probably, and do that. Oh, and mentioning that, can we build paratroopers yet? No, we're still going through that. I do want to build at least 2 divisions of paratroopers. Japan did have a bunch of those, both Army paratroopers and naval paratroopers. But to be able to, you know, do airborne invasions, even if, well, since here, I thought you were going to happen faster, but you can support that attack. Hope these guys. Yes, they're getting shore bombardment. Good. Okay, good. We've got not only got the capital here, and we're moving into there. Good. What's the terrain like around here? Mountainous. Let's attack with you into here, with you supporting it. should have waited for them to get there. Probably should have. We're gonna stop this. Okay, now that these guys are here, and we do have naval gunfire support here as well, so we're going to attack, and support. Well, they also have naval gunfire, though they're coming across rivers, so that isn't too helpful. But still. Okay, you guys should be able to mostly walk down that way. You counterattack. These guys are attacking up into there, I think. Good, and that stops that counterattack. Very good. Okay, that's not going well enough. So we'll stop that. Now, I've definitely talked about manpower and size of the army, both in this series for Japan and in the Hearts of Iron 4 series with Black Ice. And there I ran out of manpower and cheated some manpower in, and still that wasn't hardly enough. And one of the things I was recently reading said that in 1938, so that would be this year, Japan issued notices that 1 million plus, I think like 1.25 million or so, men of a certain age, I forget the exact age, not particularly old or particularly young, but, you know, military age, you know, let's go 18 to 35 or something. I don't know. I could look it up from where I read, but I just don't remember. And to be expected to be called up for military service. I do believe, I don't know, but I do believe at one stage in all of this, you know, maybe before the Mukden incident or whatever, Japan's army is largely a volunteer army. Combination of national pride, which is a very big element of it. I don't want to make light of that element, but also the, shall we say, economic hardships in Japan. So that the idea of, I can go into the military, I'll get food, I'll get clothing, I'll get housing, you know, and unlike fascist countries, Japan really doesn't have any sort of social support from the government, for the needy that I know of. Not that there aren't relief efforts, there are, especially after some of the major earthquakes, and not that there aren't various charity elements trying to help the poor, but there are, you know, you get back to the thing that families are selling their girl children to, well, often said to be geishas, and that's maybe what the buyers are, and it's sort of selling guardianship, so I don't know if it's quite slavery, but it's functionally slavery. Selling their children into be geishas, but geisha is a not entirely okay, you wouldn't want your son marrying a geisha or a former geisha if he's at all of any sort of significant status. But you would not mind that your son, your husband, or your father goes to a geisha house. Because a lot of times the geishas were sort of like party hostesses. So it was not even like on a one-on-one basis. They're sort of, now maybe like 3 or 4 friends, or maybe 20 people, and there's more than one geisha in the room. And they're just sort of party hosts. They drink with the customers. They play an instrument and sing, not play records, but, perform music, maybe dance, and make the guys feel good. It's a party hostess. It's sort of, I had an office in a building that eventually put a Hooters downstairs in it, and so I've eaten in a Hooters just a few times. Don't particularly like the food, don't particularly, but it's sort of like the idea of a Hooters, in that the women are there that are attractive, that are paid to be friendly, paid to give an ego boost to whoever comes into there, however they look, as long as they're dressed reasonably appropriate, but meaning they can be ugly guys, make the guys feel good and buy chicken wings and beer and whatnot, and then they go home. It's that sort of thing. And that's sort of what the geishas, the real sort of geishas, are. They're not like strippers, not like going to a strip club. It's not like, oh, my husband's all... No, maybe if they're poor or they don't have much money, my husband's spending all the money going to the geishas. That would be the problem of spending the money, not the problem of going to the geishas. If he was gambling it away, because Japanese love to gamble. If he was gambling it away, it would be the problem. It's the lack of having enough money is the problem. So socially, they were quite acceptable within their roles in society. It was not a shameful thing. It was a thing that, Yamamoto might not be the best thing, but very significant officials could very publicly have, congratulatory, someone gets promoted, in the government, below the minister level or something, but somebody gets promoted. Well, the government guys are taking them out to a party at the geisha house. So, and these are women that at some point generally retire, often generally marry, and retire, And so, it depends on your social class and social status. And definitely there's some problems with things socially that way, but they generally, I would say, most geishas to some degree end up reasonably well off in one facet or another. So you have that, but a lot of, I think, these geishas or people buying the children to be geishas end up they work them and they train them for geisha houses, but work them as in, cleaning the place up, doing a lot of them, the cooking, the manual labor to keep like a geisha house going. So they're doing that while being trained to be a geisha, and they're doing that. But a lot of these also, I think more than ever really go to become geishas, go down the track of basically becoming prostitutes that are often dressed, not always, I don't even know if most of the time, because a geisha's robes, those very fancy Japanese silk kimonos and stuff, those are extremely expensive. So like you could have a full setup of that or a new automobile in Japan at the time. Yeah, in which most people didn't have an automobile. So having this sort of expensive geisha robe and everything, that is an expense. And often the geisha itself either gets the money fronted from, sometimes men, sometimes women, don't want to use the P word, by their promoters, shall we say, by the owners of the house, of the building, so that, and they sort of have to pay it off over time. So it becomes very much of a contractual thing. And like I say, selling off their children is they're sort of buying a labor contract from their parents, and they're paying money to the parents. And like I say, it's in a way sort of not slavery, in that now the child didn't sign off on it, but the parents signed off on it, and the child needs to work the labor. You do labor to cover the costs of it, if you will. It's sort of like an indentured thing. A lot of colonials came to America as indentured servants from Europe, from Britain, in that, like, hey, yeah, we'll pay for your passage over. That's a big expense, because often it was people that, second sons, third sons, women who weren't going to be inheriting anything. And the way the economic system in Britain was, it was non-capitalistic. I know everyone wants to say capitalism. No, capitalism starts later. It is a mercantile system. Yes, it is a moneyed and property-owning economy, but it is not capitalistic. So you can't just go out and start a new business in most places in Britain. You can't. If you want to start a shoe business, you got to get a license, not just like a business license like we might kind of think of it. And in America, at least, we sort of think of it as sort of a regulatory thing to make sure you're not just stealing people's money or whatever. You're paying your sales tax and all that stuff. I've had business licenses to operate before, so I know what this is. But you had to have a specific shoe repair, manufacturer, whatever license, generally done through the guild. And the guild would sort of go, no, we've got 10 shoemakers in our small town, or large town or something. 10 shoemakers, repairers, whatever. We don't need any more. So no, sir, no, you can't do that. Because who the licensing authority were the other shoemakers, and they didn't want the competition because they're busy. Now, if they're like 24/7 busy, they've got all of their, apprentices, and they're just sort of stuck there. And yeah, we could use 2 more shoemakers. Our town is booming. Okay, they would open it up, and very often, you had to pay a big chunk of money, sort of like buying a taxi cab medallion in New York City or something, in that you had to pay, $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is for you had to pay a big chunk of money to get into the guild. So the guild sort of wants to, if the town's growing, if the town's booming, city, whatever, they're happy to have a few more, so long as you can, pony up the cash and pay and get in it and show that, yeah, you're going to have a nice shop, you're going to do all this stuff, and you can do this. Okay, that is basically non-existent in America, ever. Not that there aren't guilds or trade unions or professional business organizations. There are, but they're not limiting like that. This is fundamentally why this is not like this. This is one of the main reasons why Europe and America still very much are different and will remain so, even though we're culturally very similar. Because we were founded by all the people that going, yeah, my pops owns a shoemaking, because then you would repair and make shoes, and there weren't huge factories back like in the 18th century. And so you would make, the shoe. My pop owns a shoe thing. But my older brother's going to inherit it. I've been trained how to do it because I was a child growing up making shoes, working in the family business. So I know how to make shoes. I'm even better than my brother, but my elder brother's going to inherit it. And hey, I've either earned enough money or my pop has given me, the tools to make shoes, so. And now, all I need is some leather and a place to work. I could keep working as a paid person in my family shoe business, but that isn't very much money. Not if I want to raise a family. Traditionally in Britain, and I know the social economic things in Britain, generally speaking, men at the age of 30 got married to women right around the age of 18, because at age 30, their father had been 50 years old and dies, so they inherit the business. So now they have a steady income and ownership, so that women out there are now either attracted to, in the sense of not maybe so much that he's hot, sexy, or cool, but, well, maybe cool, that he owns a shoe store, or, a shoe not, like a shop, a shoemaking shop. He owns a shoe shop. And that's a good business. And if I were to marry him, I'll be well taken care of, my children will be well taken care of, and it will be a good thing. So, and also the parents of that 18 to 20-year-old, yeah, my daughter is going to marry a stable situation, not the guy over at the pub who's 20 years old and, drinks too much every night. He's going to marry a business. So you get this kind of situation. So most 30-year-olds are marrying 20-year-olds. That's what a great bulk of it is. And so that is sort of the situation. So that is sort of the social economic situation in Britain. When you inherit the farm, the shop, the whatever, or about to, or your father's old and is maybe still owns it, but is mostly in retirement. So it's all like, yeah, he's gonna be getting it. He's getting more pay than just as a person working in it, because he's sort of taken over the business. But the business still belongs to the father and still gets enough money to support his basic, living needs. He becomes an attractive marriage potential. Okay, so, but if you're 20 years old and you're looking towards a future of that, but you don't even have you look around and there's no towns in Britain letting you open up new shoe stores, shoe shops. What are you going to do? Oh, and you have an income to put money in your food and barely keep you clothed and barely house yourself. Well, you decide you want to go to America. Generally on at least later 18th century ships, with you're paying passage, I know you paid for the, it's going to cost you, $100, or £100 or whatever, sort of expensive to go there. Oh, and then the food, you either bring your own food on the ship or you pay extra for food. So you've got to get a journey's worth of food that's suitable for onboard ship that's going to survive and last. And so you need all of this to get to America. So to get to America, you would go, okay, I'm a shoe guy. I'm going to indenture myself. Often it was a contract of labor that might very well specify work as a shoemaker for somebody for 5 years. And they're also going to maybe pay me a little bit of money, or they're responsible for housing me in a reasonable situation and giving me food enough, So the reason it's not just, because maybe it would just be a year or two of what you would get paid for in your job, but the reason it's 5 or 10 years, depending. Now, if you had skills, it was probably like a 5 year or less, or maybe just even a year or two if you're highly skilled. But is because that whoever's taking care of, whatever, they don't pay you so much like you would normally get for a salary, but they have to support you, your living conditions. And so that stretches out the time, and so you sign that contract and you come to America. That's sort of the indentured servants thing. And a lot of women who weren't in line to marry the shoe shop owner, but could get a husband, not unattractive for their conditions, shall we say, because they may not be bathing and other things that a modern person might not find them entirely attractive if they didn't necessarily brush their teeth, so we might not find them too attractive today. But these aren't the ugly ones or whatever, but no, pub owner, shoe shop owner, farm owner, or whatever is wanting to marry them right away, and so they are either going to marry or do common law situation, basically just shack up together, but the government sort of recognizes that you're married to a degree. Either you're going to shack up with a day laborer, which may be a person that gets paid per day going different jobs, or just somebody who works in a shoe shop getting very little and can barely support himself. How's he going to support his kids? So they are going to have a job working often as some sort of maid of work. Could be a cook, could be whatever. Yeah, this ain't so good. Because the marriage prospects, I can get married, I can have children, but it ain't going to be so good. well, if I do an indentured servant to go to America, I can go over there and then find a husband, because there's not enough women. There's a lot more men going to America than women. I don't know quite the percentage, and lots of men get married, but it's definitely women have much more choices or much easier to choose. So they sort of know this, and this gets back and forth in letters and whatnot, and so that they'll go, okay, now they may do a 10-year kind of thing just because they're going to be a maid. They're skilled at domestic work and maybe farm work or some other sort of basic sort of light labor. They're not heavy labor slaves. I know you didn't want all this talk in the middle of a Japanese thing, but so they'll sign off a portion of their lives to get to America. And of course, if you get to America and you're pretty and attractive and find the right husband, he'll buy out your indentureship. He'll go to the person. They'll often trade the indentureships around, because say you get as an indentured maid through a broker or something, because the family in Virginia or Boston or whatever doesn't know who or what or has anybody in there. They just sort of set up, yeah, we need somebody, can you do it, and we'll pay this. And you may get out there and they may go down economically, or they may not like you and trade you off to a neighbor or something like this. So you are a bit of a commodity. You don't really have too much of a choice. You've indentured yourself. But if you're pretty and you're young and you meet the person who has the money, they'll go, even though that it's hard to get maids because in America, because there's not enough women who want to do it, and you can just, if you're willing to go roughing it a little bit out in the colony, out in the edge near where the Indians raid, you can just sort of go kind of get land. And so if your husband wants to go clear and make a farm and whatever else, why are you going to go work on somebody else's? Now, of course, not everybody owns an axe. An axe costs a lot of money. And owns a shovel, and owns a saw, and owns the other things to go, a hoe, and all the stuff to go farm. They don't necessarily have all the tools, so even farm laborers are sort of like, yeah, I can go get free land and farm, but I don't have any tools, and tools are going to cost $200, and I've got, after last year, I saved up $5. Yeah, I don't have the $200 for the tools, or whatever the economic scale is. So, even though there's free land, functionally, maybe get scalped, depends where and when, and there's definitely Indian wars, often prompted by the French, sometimes when even they're at peace with the English, but some agents will pay off, bribe Indian tribes to raid English household or English territories to sort of push them back, so that there's ongoing warfare. In the early days, it wasn't the cavalry coming in and slaughtering all the Indians. The Indians often came in and slaughtered all the Europeans. It was a much harder situation than movies and modern or postmodernist thought would have you think of white privilege and the Europeans just rolling over the Indians. Oh no. No. You can look at the French and Indian Wars and how the British barely hung on many of their things and didn't hang on to other places. Oh no, it wasn't all their own way. Not at all. So, but if you're willing to push out in there, and you could show that, hey, yeah, I've got this wagon load of stuff to go create a farm, you could easily get a woman to go with you. So who wants to be a maid for somebody else? Now, a bunch of women didn't necessarily want to go out to the wilds of the frontier of the colony, too. It's a scary thing. But they're looking to be married off to somebody who's sort of successful. Well, you don't want to lose your person that, it's hard to find it. So you're going to have to be paid off well for that labor contract, enough to easily afford another one, plus have some extra money. And so, but if woman finds the right husband, buy her out of bondage, if you will, and into it. So if you just think that, it's just white people oppressing black people in America early on, no. that's sort of the situation with, get back to Japan. You have children. You can't, because of the way the land is divided up, often the farms are, like you will find more so on the continent. On the continent, and this is, I sort of know of France as a comparison to Britain, they would often go, oh yeah, we've got 3 sons. Okay, yeah, they each get a third of the farm. Okay. And maybe, one of them, okay, he inherits, buys, gets, because you may marry, the prospect of marriage may be to a woman who is the only daughter to somebody else and who will inherit some land or whatever. So there's some of that and being buying. But then when that guy has 2 sons, he divides it up. So farms start getting small in Europe and get to the point that they're hard to sustain a family on. Where Britain, you have primogeniture, meaning inherited by the eldest male. And although that is not fair, and in modern social justice, fairness is what's important. No, it's not fair, but it is much better because it keeps the farms in a size that will readily support a family. And just the way it, because you can, back then, often they had lots of children for multiple reasons. One, once they get to a certain age, they were useful on the farm. And 2, many children didn't survive through to adulthood. So you want, because if half your children die before the age of 20, you want to have more children. So, we want to have 2 children successfully get to adulthood, so we need to have 4. Plus, also, birth control wasn't really much of a thing. Was in the ancient world. In the Roman world, they definitely had birth control, at least for the middling and upper classes. In fact, Augustus, the Roman emperor, bans the youth. I think it was Augustus. Pretty sure it was Augustus. Bans the use of birth control for the noble families of Rome, because he wants to have more noble families of Rome, because the empire is growing and they will be useful in managing and running the empire. So he bans it. Now, how do they check? That's different matter. But how effective was the ban? But he does ban it in law for the elites in Rome, because he wants to have more noble families. So in the ancient world, they had birth control. In the 18th century, they didn't. It comes and goes in through history. Well, they did in the 18th century. They did have condoms. Condoms were expensive. Condoms were reused. Condoms were generally animal intestines cut and sewn up of the right size and length, and often some sea animals, I believe, too, that were particularly thin. So they did have condoms, but they were rare, expensive, and very few people had them. So, okay, so you get the idea here. In Japan, you have small farms that can't support too many children. Farmers are having a problem. What they believe is going to be a situation, instead of having starving children, you will have a child who will get fed, will be treated reasonably well. They believe this, not that this is the case, but they believe this, because that's what they're being told. And I'm sure in some cases it's true. I don't know whether it's, I just quite honestly don't know whether it's true most of the cases or just a tiny bit of cases, don't know. But they're told that, they're going to be fed, they're going to be treated really well. They will get a profession that's better than being a farmer's wife, and especially as sort of a low-level farmer's wife, being a geisha may be considered a better profession, that they'll get trained to become a geisha. And so that they will, to pay, that they're paying up front for the labor of the child to work. They're paying, and the reason it extends out a long time is because they're also being trained, so effort is being put on them to being trained. And then once they're sort of kind of trained, they're, again, I'm keeping away from using one word, but they're in sponsors, shall we say, will pay for all of the accoutrements, the clothing, all of the other stuff going on, their musical instruments and all of that stuff, will pay for that up front to get them going, to get their kit going and good. So, and they sign away contracts so that they owe these people money through the legal system. So they can't like, oh, well, hey, you move to my geisha house, I'll pay you twice as much as you were making at the other one. No, they're contractually. Now, they will get, contracts will get sold and changed and back and forth. And there are definitely ones that very much try to get good situations for them. But I don't know, again, I don't know whether those are probably more the rarity than the actuality. But, so you can understand how it is not slavery for the child or the adult. It is a contractual relationship, although at least initiated by somebody who doesn't have a say in it because they're a child. Once they get to be a bit more of an adult, and once at some point, I think they could try to bail out of the situation, but it's not easy, and it often looks like, because again, it's not a sexual thing. It's thought of as in a world in which there's starvation going on in Japan, it looks good to them. Now there are, and I've read recently, especially the Japanese destroyer captain and his sort of love relationship with a geisha, which went on for a while, to the point that the geisha convinced him not to come to the geisha house anymore, and she would see him outside of the geisha house, so that, because he was spending too much money at the geisha house to be with her. And yes, there was sex there, and yes, there's a lot of, so from this kind of stuff and understanding, there's a lot of sex between geishas and their customers, but it's purely on the voluntary side, and that they are making enough money that they don't have to do this kind of thing as their reason for employment. But, like I was saying, there are also lots of houses of prostitution, and some are very blatant, very low level, very crummy prostitution houses, servicing very poor people that are just paying pennies a time, and seeing lots of customers, and these are god-awful conditions. These aren't your glamorous sort of, whatever. These are god-awful situations. And up into other ones that are houses of prostitution, but from the outside they look, and everything looks like a geisha situation, but the customer knows that they're paying for a high-class prostitute. And so this is what children are being sold into in Japan, and I do believe there's a lot of lying going on to the parents, and there's a lot of desperation on the parents' side. So, and this also does fuel Japan's expansion into Korea, into Taiwan, and eventually into Manchuria, in that if I'm a farmer, I can farm, I know how to farm. You mean I can be transported to a farm somewhere, and they're going to give me some basic farming tools, and I'll get some land, maybe recently appropriated from a Chinese, Korean, or Manchurian person? Great, sign me up. And they would do that. And that's similar to American colonization, in some ways very, very different. So, this has gone on long enough, and we got on a tangent of various things. I hope it was fun. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.